Good morning, crochet crafters. We're going to be making the top of a stocking for Christmas or for any time, but we're using a front and back post double crochet stitch for the topper. I'm going to show you two ways of doing this. This is a topper for a single crochet working in the round that we add after the fact. So I've added this on, but you can see it's the kind of Santa stocking where the topper is loose and fluffy and lays over, and then there's no back seam stitch because we're working in the round. Some of my stockings have a back seam stitch, and that's so that it can hold it in place for Santa goodies and that type of thing for the kids. This is a Nordic stocking that I'm working on, and again, it's the same back and front post double crochet stitch, which I love because it really makes a nice topper. But this time I've just continued on. So this one's not going to fold over. This one's just going to be the top and lay flat. So I'm showing you these two types of versions so you can determine which one is going to be best for you. But it's a great topper for any stocking that you're making. And if you're using a different pattern, that's fine too. You can add this after the fact. So however large you need to make it. Now my actual stocking that I just showed you in mushroom color, the stitches for the bootie part are 36. So I need to make 38, and I need to crochet 39 chains because, as you know, when you start working and you're going to lose one of those because that's the one that your hook is in. So you're going to have 38, and you need that extra stitch on each side when you go to put your stocking together. Now, once you've chained 39 in the color you want, make sure you have it in the same direction because we're going to be working in the round today. And working in the round, let me show you the tools we're using. We're using a craft scissor, we're using a craft plastic crochet needle, darning needle, and I am using the Craft Smart yarn because it's 2022 and the inflation rate has been sky high. And when I go to the craft store now, this not only has beautiful colors, but it happens to be the most economical yarn that I can find, brand new yarn. It is 100% acrylic, which I like because it's machine washable. Read the instructions and take the suggestions because that's the yarn's going to come out best using that. I'm using an I9 because that's what they're suggesting, 5.5 millimeter for anybody else that is not using a USA. And it's medium worsted, number 4. And again, it's by Craft Smart. I am not a spokesperson for any yarn company, by the way. I just am looking for the best deals and the best colors. And this happens to be what's called their mushroom color. They also have a wine color that's gorgeous, and this is their red. So lay your stitches out flat. Make sure you have them in the same direction that you want to go when you stitch through, and slip stitch into the first stitch that you were working in. So once you've slip stitched, you want to make sure, again, they're all facing the same way, because if they get twisted, you're not going to have a decent double crochet. And once you've done that, you want to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And then you're going to go into that first stitch that you have, and you're going to do a double crochet. So the first stitch that you have available, you want to do a double crochet, and you want to use this as a double crochet. I'm going to move this. So what you're going to do is, if you don't know how to do a double crochet, let me just stop. When you're doing a double crochet, I'm going to give you a nice hint too. In these stitches, there's kind of a loop in the middle. If you work under the back loop, you lose a little bit of that bottom design. So I try to stay in the top of that stitch. The other thing is, when you do a double crochet, you wrap it around and you go into that very top of your chain, and you pull it through once and you pull it through twice. And that's your double crochet. I've been using this as sample purposes, so I have some glue or something there. But again, if you stay on that top of that chain post there, it just looks lovely because you'll get that nice trim and it just looks a little cleaner. It doesn't matter if you get under the second one, it's fine too. But I'm kind of a stickler for details, and I like to have a clean, just a clean look. So go all the way around with your double crochets, and then I'm going to show you some fun stuff that we're going to do. And when we get to the end, you have to remember we're working in what? The round. And I'm going to give you another hint. When you're working in the round with stitches, if you're working in the back loop of like a single crochet, if you're working flat and you're chaining one and turning, or if you're working in the round, even though you're doing the same stitch, it's going to look differently because of the way the rows are. If you work flat, back and forth, and then seam it up, it's going to be ribbed. And if you work in the round, it looks nice and flat. So depending on whether you're working in the round or whether you're working flat and turning, that is going to determine the actual look of your stocking. I like to give everybody the methodology behind things because as crafters, we all go off and do our own thing. And sometimes I know I create my own patterns and take other people's stitches and go, oh, I can incorporate that in this stitch, or I can do this. And if you know the methodology behind the crochet stitches, then you can determine what will look best for your individual project. So you can see how I'm doing this in the round. This is going to be the very top of my stocking. I'm talking too much, so I'm losing that double crochet. I do so many things in the amigurumi style that sometimes I forget where I'm at. I've been learning how to do a Nordic pattern, which is very difficult for me anyways. Somebody else might find it really invigorating, but it's quite mind. And I think crocheting is something where you're really using your brain a lot too. It's not something that's just throw the yarn on the hook and make it happen. You're really using your brain power. If this crinkles, it's perfectly okay. There's not a problem with it crinkling. And a lot of people would rather work with it flat and then have the seam up the back after the fact, but I like working in the round with this because it just keeps it a nice, clean, refreshing look, and you don't have a big, not that sewing in a seam is a bad thing, because it's good on some stockings. And again, the reason you'd rather have a seam there on some stockings is because it lays nice and flat, and when you put Santa's goodies in there for the kids, it doesn't flop all over the place. But this double post, the front and back post on the top, keeps it nice and firm and in place. So that's what I like about, if you're working in the round, it's going to be a nice in the round option. So when you get to the end of your crochet, double crochets, there's something you're going to do here. You're going to go into the one that you chained 3, the top of the chain, and you're going to slip stitch. And you're going to chain 3 again. Now, everybody, I know I am, everybody is so used to working in these top, back, and front loops. Ignore them. Completely ignore them. Because for this project, I just flipped it the right way. For this project, we are not touching these. We're just using this as a reference point. This is not that project. So if you don't know how to do double crochets, you probably don't want to attempt doing a back and front post right now. So we're going to do a front double crochet. So how do you do that? See that double crochet that you did? You're going to wrap your yarn and you're going to put your hook under that. So you're going to put it under and you're going to pull it through. And you're going to do a double crochet just like you would normally do a double crochet. So if you didn't see that, we're going to do it again, but we're using this as a benchmark. These are our posts. I mean, these are our benchmarks, but we're not using these to crochet in like you would normally. So wrap your yarn around. Now we're doing what's called a back post. So turn it so that you're looking at it, and go in from the back of the stitch to your double crochet that you just did, and pull that yarn through. So you have that yarn in the back like that, and pull it through for your crochet. That's your back post. Your front post. So we alternate. So now we pull it through the front post again. Should look something like that. Now, this always baffled my mind because the front and the back look the same, but what you're doing is use this as your benchmark. So push this back, go in behind. If you can remember to go in behind those top stitches and pull the post, that's your back post double crochet. Then this is your front post of your double crochet. And you're going through. It's still a double crochet, but it's going through another double crochet. Okay, you're not using any of those posts, the top loops, I should say, that you would work in. And remember, you're alternating both. Now, can you do a total back one, or can you do a total front one? Sure. It doesn't look as nice, in my opinion. So alternating, it gives it that nice dimension that you need. So what are we doing now? It might take a little bit of time for you to get used to manipulating that back post, because I always find that it's a little bit of work. So you have to hold it in your hand, and when you wrap it around and you grab it like so, pull it through, and don't be in a hurry. If you can't get there yet, just wrap it around again, because sometimes it does unravel, and if you're not used to working with this type of back and front post design, then it can be a little bit hard to do. If you are not familiar with doing this, try it, and just, if you finish a few, go back and look at it and make sure that you've alternated, because when I first started doing this stitch, I would get lost and forget whether I said, did I do a back post or a front post? And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay. So just make sure, if you stop, that you line that up and you go, okay, I'm going into the next stitch, because that's another mistake I've done, is I've gone into the same post with the same stitch. You can probably just hold it with your 2 fingers like that too. So remember, if you have to pop that out with your finger, you can pop it out. You go through, double crochet, and turn and make sure that these are in the front and you're going through the back. You almost have to pinch it with your fingers too, otherwise you'll lose your yarn. This is a nice red color. I really enjoy their colors. Inflation is really taking hold, and everything costs a lot more money, so wherever you can save money is a good thing. And a lot of people work with wool. I don't really like wool. I don't like wool because I can't wash it. And when you have kids, I have kids and grandkids, and I need to be able to wash the stockings because they get candy and chocolate and marshmallow, gummies, everything. So front and back post, see, you can see that's looking lovely. I like it, I like it. I'm going to show you how to do the next row. And after we do the next row, I'm going to give it to you on your own. You're going to do 5 rows for a topper. And if you want 5 rows, it's going to look like this in their mushroom color. If you want to do a bigger, you know, cuff, you can. But standard, I find 5 rows work really well and are kind of the standard for stocking. But again, if you, with this size yarn and with this size hook. Now, if you're using a smaller hook, all bets are off. Just remember too, if you're using a smaller hook or a larger hook, your cuff is, you know, this cuff is probably going to be 5.5 to 6 inches wide. If you're using a different size yarn or crochet hook, it's going to be different size than mine, and that's okay too. It's perfectly okay. It's just I can't guarantee that yours is turning out like mine is turning out. Now for the Nordic stocking, I used a much different. So we are on this last crochet. And this is where we did the 3 up right here. So this is our post. This is our back seam, technically. So I'm going to slip stitch again into this back seam so you can see. And I'm going to chain 3 again. So you're chaining 3 every time you go up. And that's going to be your back seam for your... Now, this is the first row. The next row is a little bit more difficult. It's not as easy, because it gets harder and harder to see where those back loops are. And if you master this, give yourself a big pat on the back, because I found this a little hard. Now, the first one, if you touch this, you can see that this is bubbly, and that's your first one. So that bubbly one is what? A front post. So you're going to go into a front post. Now, that front post has a bottom section right here and a top section. And you want to make sure you do not go into the bottom section of the double crochet that you just did. You want to make sure you're going and grabbing the top of that double crochet, because if you grab the bottom, you're doing it wrong. So when you go through and you grab the front posts are easy because they kind of stick out, protrude. You're doing another front post in the same front post, okay? So front posts go in front posts, and back posts go in back post. Now the back post is a bugaboo because see, it's back here. And if you look from the back, it also has the 2 sections, the bottom and the top. If you take the bottom, you're doing it wrong. If you take the top, you're doing it right, but you don't want to take that loop with it. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to turn it over, and you're going to find that top part right there, and you're going to put it through the top of that back post double crochet. We'll do another one because that one was a little hard to see. But so you've got the back and the front post, and you're going into the top of the front. Again, the front posts are pretty easy to see. If you're doing it wrong, your stitch won't look the same in the back. It will have a bumpy one of these chains, because sometimes when you're pulling it in, somebody's I was doing it wrong at one time, and you could see the bumpiness of this chain, but it should start to look consistent in the front and in the back. So I'm going to pull this apart. See, That's the back post. So turn it from the back. You're going in the back, always using this top as a benchmark. So you're coming in from the front to do the front post. And then you're chaining and you're going in the back. Back post is not easy to see. See? Really nice to see the front top bumpy part. Just grab it like that and pulling it through and doing your front post double crochet. And again, if you have to like pull your yarn apart, sometimes I do, you can see that back post a lot easier, because sometimes when you're first starting out, it's not an easy visual. And there's nothing wrong with like taking the yarn and kind of stretching it a little bit so you can see what you're doing. Making sure, again, that you're doing the front with the front, and that's what it should look like all the way down. Making sure you get your back post. The one thing about crocheting too is you can pause the video or you can try it on your own and you don't have to continue to follow me. I'm going to do this one row with you, and then you are going to do the next 3 yourself, and then you're going to just tie off like you would tie off any project. And if you want to meet me back here for another video, I'm going to show you how to attach it to your red amigurumi style holiday stocking. Again, working in the round is preferable, because if you work in the round with this type of a stitch, you have a, see now it's easy with that back post to not see it and to go through the wrong thing. So make sure you're going through the top part of your double crochet on the back and front posts. So this type of a stitch creates what's known as the top and the bottom loop there. You can see it. Don't be afraid to stretch that yarn, because the back post is sometimes really, on that first 2 rows, is hard to find. And then once you get into a rhythm and you've made your first couple of rows, that back post tends to straighten out. But on that first row, you can kind of see where it leans. And if you don't stretch it out and make sure that you're using the proper part of the back post, you'll have a problem. The front posts are pretty easy. So go back here. So if you decide to do a bigger stocking, just make sure that your topper is 2 stitches larger than your actual stocking, because you want it to be a little larger, so A, it fits over the top of your stocking, and B, it has enough room to stretch, and you know, and you can use it as those side panels. The other thing is, if you're working in the round like this, you got to have the same amount, because you're just continuing on. Again, this is my Nordic pattern, and you want to make sure that you're, now the Nordic one I'm doing is only a 2 worsted because it's using a yarn that you're working with the front of the yarn, and then you're carrying some yarn behind the stitch so that you can do the design. So I don't need to have this heavy a weight, because otherwise you can't do the pattern. It doesn't show up as nicely. So I've got one more front post. Remember, when you get back, just bear in mind where this chain is. So now you're at the top of your chain 3 again, and you need to just slip stitch through. See, and that makes sure that that always is going to look uniform. And then you're going to go ahead and chain 3. And then you're always starting where? In that front post. So remember, you're ending with a top front post crochet, and you're beginning with a top post crochet. And the way you can tell if you're doing this right is you flip it over, and the back should basically look bumpy like the front, and it should be a straight line down, and then you'll know you're doing it right. So do 5 of those. Meet me back here for the next section of the stocking. And you are with Lori's Handiwork on YouTube, and I also sell the stockings at Lori's Handiwork on Etsy. Thank you for joining me. Please like me and follow me for other creative Christmas stockings.